The storm exploded into fury, turning the forest into a chaotic mess of sound and movement. Rain hammered down from the treetops, soaking me until my clothes clung to my skin like a second layer. The scent of wet earth and pine filled my lungs as I stumbled forward, my boots sinking deep into the mud that seemed determined to hold me in place. My blonde hair, loose from its braid, stuck to my face and neck in drenched strands. I shouldn't have been out here, especially not alone, not in the dark, not with the tensions rising between our settlement and the lands beyond the border. But necessity doesn't care about safety. The herbs I needed to treat Maeve's fever only grew along the northern creek. Waiting until morning meant another long night of her suffering. Just a little farther, I told myself, gripping my satchel tighter. Inside it was my grandmother's silver pendant, a crescent moon with a small blue stone. She had placed it around my neck on her deathbed, her hands trembling with the effort. "This will protect you when nothing else can," she had said. "But only if you protect others first." A ridiculous thought, maybe. I was 22, orphaned at 12, and had spent the years since learning that protection was a privilege reserved for the lucky, the connected, the strong. I was none of those things. In our settlement, I was tolerated for my knowledge of herbs and healing, but I was never truly seen, never chosen for celebrations, never courted like the others. Whispers followed me. "Strange girl, wild eyes, speaks to plants more than people." They weren't wrong. Another bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating my path just as the ground seemed to give way beneath me. I tumbled into a ravine, my body slamming against rocks and roots until I came to a halt at the bottom. Pain shot through my left ankle. The storm raged on, the thunder roaring, like the growl of some ancient beast. That's when I heard it. A different sound cut through the storm's fury. A whimper, high-pitched and desperate. I froze, telling myself I'd imagined it. Then it came again, unmistakable in its distress. Using a fallen branch for support, I pushed myself up, wincing as my weight settled onto my injured ankle. The whimpering grew louder, pulling me toward a tangle of exposed roots at the base of a massive oak. As I drew closer, I saw two small eyes reflecting the dim light, frightened eyes in a tiny face. A wolf pup. My breath caught. Wolves were sacred to the people beyond the border, the ones we called silver manes, with their distinct coloring. They were more than wolves if the stories were true. Shapeshifters, warriors, beings who lived in two worlds, human and beast. The pup whined again, and in the next flash of lightning, I saw why. Its hind leg was caught between two rocks, a stream of rainwater, threatening to drown it as the storm worsened. Common sense screamed at me to run. The silver manes guarded their young fiercely, and being caught near one, especially by the adult pack, was a death sentence. But as the pup's terrified eyes met mine, I felt my grandmother's pendant grow warm against my chest. "This will protect you when nothing else can, but only if you protect others first." "Damn it," I muttered. Dropping to my knees in the mud, I whispered to the pup, "I'm going to help you. Try not to bite me." My fingers worked carefully around its trapped legs, slick with rain and what I suspected was blood. The pup stiffened, but didn't snap at me. Its eyes never left my face as I eased the rocks apart. When the leg finally came free, the little wolf tried to scramble away, but collapsed, whimpering. "You're hurt," I said, though it was obvious, and this storm wasn't letting up. Decision made. I removed my outer jacket and gently wrapped the trembling creature in it, pulling it close to my chest. Its fur was a silvery gray, marked with a white streak between its eyes. A mark I'd heard only royal bloodlines had. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any wolf pup. "What were you doing out here alone?" I whispered, feeling its rapid heartbeat against my palm. "Where's your family?" As if in answer, a howl split the storm, distant but unmistakable. Then another joined it and another, until the air vibrated with their calls. They were searching for it, and they were getting closer. I clutched the pup tighter, my mind racing. The Silvermane border was at least 3 miles north. How had this little one wandered so far? And what would happen when they tracked it back to me? The settlement was closer, but bringing back a wolf pup would raise questions I couldn't answer. Our people feared the Silver Manes, having lost hunters and trappers to their territorial fury. The safest bet seemed to be finding shelter until the storm passed. I remembered an old trapper's cabin, half a mile east. With the pup cradled against me and pain shooting through my ankle with every step, I began the slow, painful journey through the dark. The cabin loomed like a shadow against the night, its windows dark, the door hanging crookedly inside. The air was thick with the smell of dust, dry yet musty, while the roof held up mostly intact. I carefully placed the pup on a weathered table, then hurriedly gathered some dry wood from the corners of the room. My fingers were stiff from the cold as I struggled to start a fire in the stone hearth. When the flames finally sparked to life, I unwrapped the pup to check its wounds. Its leg caught between the rocks was swollen but not broken. What really worried me, though, was a deep gash along its side, hidden in the darkness earlier. "Someone meant you harm," I muttered to myself, anger flaring inside me. This wasn't an accident. I pulled out a small jar of salve from my bag, yarrow, comfrey, and pine resin, and gently applied it to the wound. The pup watched me warily, but didn't move. Its eyes seemed to study my every move, and I gave it a soft smile. "I'm not going to hurt you." I wrapped it in my jacket, now dry, and added, "But I can't keep you either. Once the storm clears, we have to get you back to your pack." The pup's ears twitched, and it licked my hand with a soft pink tongue. I smiled despite myself, stroking the soft fur between its ears. For all the danger this creature posed, something about it made me feel oddly comforted, like I'd found something I didn't even know I was searching for. Exhaustion hit me hard. The adrenaline left, replaced by a deep weariness that weighed me down. I settled onto the cold floor next to the hearth, the pup curled in my lap. I promised myself I would rest just a little while before continuing my journey. I hadn't meant to fall asleep. I woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving only the soft sound of water dripping from the trees. The first light of dawn filtered through the cracks in the cabin, casting dusty rays across the floor. The pup was no longer in my lap. Panic seized me, and I shot up. But then I spotted it by the door, standing on its injured leg, with barely a trace of its previous weakness. The salve had worked wonders. Or maybe these creatures healed differently than their ordinary animals. "You're feeling better," I noted, relief washing over me. "That's good. We should get you home before—" My words were cut short as the pup's head snapped toward the door. Its body went rigid. I heard it then, footsteps, heavy, purposeful. Someone was approaching. My heart froze. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. I grabbed my satchel, searching frantically for anything I could use as a weapon. The pup backed toward me, a low growl rumbling from its chest. "Shh," I whispered, though I knew it was futile. Whatever was coming had already caught our scent. The door burst open with a single powerful kick. Sunlight streamed in, outlining a massive figure. A man taller and broader than any I'd ever seen. He was dressed in dark leathers, adorned with silver. His hair shimmered like moonlight, pulled back from a face that looked carved from stone and shadow. His eyes wolf-gray and filled with an icy fury, locked on mine, and the air seemed to still around us. The Alpha King of the Silver Manes. The stories hadn't done him justice. He radiated power, ancient and primal, like a storm given human form. His voice was deep, rough, and filled with barely contained rage. "You dare!" he growled each word, sharp as a blade, "to take what is mine." The pup darted forward, racing to the man's side with a happy yip. But instead of the reunion, I expected the Alpha's expression darkened further when he noticed the wound on the pup's flank. "What did you do to him?" he demanded, stepping into the cabin. "I found him trapped in a ravine during the storm," I explained, backing away until my shoulders hit the wall. His leg was stuck between rocks and he was injured. "I only wanted to help," he snarled. closing the distance between us with predatory ease. Your kind leaves traps in our territory, poisons our waters, hunts our kin for sport, and you claim to help. Before I could react, his hand shot out and wrapped around my throat, just enough pressure to make breathing difficult, but not impossible. A warning, not a threat. Please, I gasped, feeling my grandmother's pendant warm between us. I would never harm a child regardless of its form. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps, but his grip didn't loosen. You know what he is? He said. It wasn't a question. I nodded as much as I could, considering his hold. The pup whimpered, pawing at the alpha's leg, before darting back to me, circling my feet with evident distress. The alpha's gaze followed the pup, his brow furrowing slightly. Jace, he called to the pup. Return to the others. But Jace ignored the command, positioning himself firmly between me and the alpha, his posture challenging as he gave another sharp whine, almost as if arguing. The man's jaw clenched, but his grip on my throat loosened. You used medicine on him, he stated, his gaze shifting to my satchel. A salve for the wound. I said, my voice barely a whisper, my breath caught in my throat, and I freed his trapped leg. That's all, I swear it. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring, his wolf-gray eyes narrowing as he assessed the truth in my words. I held perfectly still, my heart hammering in my chest. After what felt like forever, he finally released me, stepping back with clear reluctance. Jace seems to believe you, he muttered. His eyes were still as hard as stone. He's young and naive. I am neither. Outside, the howls began again, louder this time, circling the cabin. The alpha's pack had found us. What happens now? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. He swept his gaze over me, assessing. Now you will come with me. To my territory, fear gripped my chest. No human had ever returned from the Silvermane lands. Why, I asked, my voice faltering. Because Jace is not just any pup. He is my brother's son, my heir. And you've touched him with your magic. It wasn't magic, I protested. Just herbs. Silence. He said nothing, his expression unreadable. The wound you treated was made by a silver blade. Such injuries do not heal easily for our kind, yet his is nearly mended. There is more to you than you claim human. He started toward the door, clearly expecting me to follow. When I hesitated, his lips curved into a cold smile. You can come willingly, or I can carry you unconscious across my territory. The choice is yours, but I suggest you choose quickly. My pack grows impatient, and they are far less diplomatic than I am. Jace nuzzled my leg gently as if offering silent encouragement. My grandmother's pendant pulsed warm against my skin, almost as if it were guiding me. I'll come, I said, straightening my back. But I expect to be returned safely once you've satisfied your curiosity. The alpha's expression remained unreadable, but something like dark amusement flickered in his eyes. Bold demands from a trespasser, he remarked before turning and walking out, clearly expecting me to follow. With Jace trotting at my heels, I stepped into the daylight, ready to face whatever fate awaited me in the realm of the wolves. The forest around us glistened with raindrops, catching the morning light, turning ordinary leaves into shimmering tapestries. Normally, I might have found it beautiful. But now it only heightened the feeling of unreality as I faced the pack of wolves emerging from the trees. There were 7 of them, massive creatures with silver-gray fur, their watchful eyes glowing with an intelligence far beyond mere animals. They parted as the alpha approached. Their posture was deferential but alert. One wolf, darker than the others, with a scar running down its muzzle, growled low as it caught my scent. Stand down, Kyle the alpha commanded without looking back. Kel stopped growling, but continued to glare at me, his hostility clear. They don't seem to share Jace's opinion of me, I observed quietly. The alpha glanced over his shoulder, his face still unreadable. They trust my judgment, not yours. That's enough for now. Jace bounded ahead excitedly, interacting with the other wolves. One of them, a female with unusual amber eyes, approached him, with visible relief, licking his healed wound before turning her gaze on me. Unlike the others, her look wasn't threatening, but curious. "She's his mother," the alpha explained, following my gaze. "My brother's mate. She's been half mad with worry since Jace disappeared." A pang of sympathy shot through me. "I'm glad he's reunited with her. Are you?" His tone was coldly skeptical. "Or would you have preferred to keep him perhaps as a trophy, to display to your settlement?" My temper flared unexpectedly. I risked my life to help him. I could have left him to drown in that ravine or handed him over to our hunters. Instead, I treated his wounds and kept him safe through the night. If you're determined to see evil in that, then there's nothing I can say to convince you otherwise. The wolves around us tensed at my outburst, but the alpha merely studied me, something like surprise flashing across his features before his mask of indifference returned. "You have courage," he said, his voice softer than before. "I'll grant you that," he finally said, his voice low and begrudging. "Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless." Before I could respond, he turned to the pack and made a sharp motion with his hand. As one, the wolves melted back into the trees, leaving only Jace, his mother, and Kyle with us. "We have a journey ahead," the alpha said, his voice firm. "Can you keep up, or will your injury slow us down?" I looked down at my ankle, startled. In the chaos of the morning, I had nearly forgotten the pain. Now that he mentioned it, I could feel the dull throb return. "I'll manage," I said, unwilling to show weakness. His eyes narrowed slightly, then he turned to Kyle. "Scout ahead. Ensure our path is clear." Kyle hesitated, reluctant to leave his alpha alone with me, but eventually obeyed, slipping into the underbrush with eerie silence. The alpha turned back to me. "The truth," he said, his eyes piercing through me. "Your ankle is injured. I can smell the inflammation." I shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "It's just a sprain from the fall. I've walked on worse." He gave me a look that said he didn't believe me, then spoke again. 3 miles through dense forest uphill across the northern ridge," he challenged. My heart sank. Our journey would take us even farther from my settlement than I feared. As I said, "I'll manage." Without warning, he closed the distance between us. Before I could protest, he swept me into his arms, lifting me effortlessly as if I weighed nothing at all. I gasped my hands instinctively, gripping the leather straps across his chest. "What are you doing?" I demanded, the heat of embarrassment flooding my face. "Expediting our journey," he replied flatly. "I have no desire to watch you limp through my territory." "Put me down," I insisted, struggling against his firm grip. "I'm perfectly capable of walking." "Are all humans this stubborn?" he asked. "Or is it a special talent of yours?" He began walking with me, still in his arms, his pace steady, not even faltering under my weight. "Save your strength," he continued. "You'll need it when we reach Silvercrest." Silvercrest. The word stopped me in my tracks, my indignation momentarily replaced by curiosity. "Your settlement?" I asked, trying to ignore the closeness of his body as he carried me. "Our home," he corrected, his tone colder. "And yes, few humans know its true name. Consider yourself privileged." I fell silent, acutely aware of his presence, the steady beat of his heart against mine, the warmth radiating from his body. The faint scent of pine and something wilder clung to his skin, and I couldn't help but notice how solid he felt, how real, when everything else about this situation seemed pulled straight out of a story. Jace and his mother padded alongside us, the pup glancing up now and then to make sure I was still there. His mother, Lydia, stayed at a respectful distance, her amber eyes always fixed on her son. I couldn't help but ask, "Does he have a name?" I nodded toward the female wolf. "Lydia," the alpha said without slowing his pace. She was human once, he added, as though reading my surprise, before she chose our way. This revelation stunned me. The stories I'd heard said the Silvermanes were born, not made, their abilities passed down through bloodlines older than the mountains themselves. That surprises you, he observed, reading my expression like a book. I hesitated, unsure if my ignorance would offend him. The tales say your kind can't be created, only born. A sound that could have been a laugh escaped him, though it held no warmth. Your tales get many things wrong. It serves us to let those misconceptions stand. And what about you? I asked, emboldened by the strange intimacy of this moment. Do you have a name, or should I just call you Alpha? In my thoughts, his eyes met mine briefly, like a flash of storm clouds. Cole, he said after a moment's hesitation, though you do well to use my title when others are present. Cole. The name fit him, strong and ancient, with edges sharp enough to cut. I stored it away like a secret treasure, something small I'd claimed from this overwhelming encounter. And you? He asked casually, as if it was no big deal. What do they call you in your settlement of herb gatherers and wolf trappers? The question was barbed, designed to remind me of the chasm between our worlds, but I answered honestly despite the sting. Willa, just Willa. No family name? He asked, eyebrow raised. None worth claiming, I replied, the old pain flaring up, though I quickly buried it. My parents died when I was young. I was raised by my grandmother until her passing. After that, I lived where I was needed, helping with healing and herb craft. Something shifted in his expression, though it wasn't softness. There was a subtle change, like the lines around his mouth had relaxed. Your knowledge of herbs, he said after a moment. It's unusual for one so young. Yet I shrugged as best as I could while cradled in his arms. Necessity is an effective teacher. Necessity is an effective teacher. I said the words coming out more bitter than I intended. Indeed, he replied, his tone suggesting he understood far more than I had said. And the pendant you wear, he asked, his eyes narrowing. It has power. I felt it when I touched you. Surprised, my hand instinctively went to the pendant, the one my grandmother had given me. He'd noticed it even through his anger. It's a family heirloom, I explained, my voice soft. My grandmother said it would protect me if I protected others first. Do you believe that his question was genuine? His curiosity clear. There was no mockery in his voice, nothing like I had expected. I thought carefully before I answered. I believe there are forces in this world that go beyond our understanding. I paused, the weight of his gaze on me. Whether this pendant channels those forces, or just reminds me of my grandmother's wisdom, I can't say for sure. But Jace is alive and healing because I chose to help him. Maybe there's some truth in her words. Cole's eyes lingered on me longer, this time his gaze assessing, before he looked ahead again. Perhaps, he muttered. We fell silent after that, the forest growing denser as we climbed higher into the northern mountains. Despite my protests, I couldn't deny I was grateful for Cole's help. The terrain would have been brutal, even without my sprained ankle. By midday, the tree line began to thin, revealing rocky outcroppings with a view of the valley below. My settlement looked tiny from up here, a cluster of wooden buildings huddled by the river, like children seeking safety in numbers. They'll be searching for me, I said softly, more to myself than to Cole. Will they? His voice was laced with doubt. Would they really risk coming this far north for one missing healer? I knew the answer, and it stung. They valued my skills, but not enough to risk other lives. I was useful, but I wasn't essential. I wasn't loved. No, I admitted quietly. They won't come. A small, grim satisfaction flickered across Cole's face. Then there's nothing to compel your swift return, is there? He said, as though the matter were settled. Before I could respond, Kel returned, his heavy paws thudding against the ground as he loped toward us, a sense of urgency in his step. He stopped in front of Cole, and a silent communication passed between them. Cole's expression hardened. "I understand," he said, his tone suddenly sharp. Cale had made no sound, but I could feel the shift in the air. To my surprise, Cole gently set me back on my feet, steadying me with a hand on my elbow as I winced from the pressure on my ankle. "What's going on?" I asked, my gut twisting. "Hunters," he replied tersely. "Your people. In our territory." A cold dread settled over me. "They're not looking for me," I said, shaking my head. "They wouldn't dare come this far. And yet here they are." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. 5 men, armed with silver-tipped weapons, moving with purpose toward our borders. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "A coincidence, perhaps? Or did you somehow alert them before I found you?" "I didn't," I protested. "I had no way to communicate with anyone. You found me asleep in that cabin." Cole turned to Kyle, who stood silently by his eyes, flickering with suspicion. "Wait here with Sienna," Cole ordered. "Cale and I will deal with the intrusion. Deal with—" I broke off, horror creeping up my spine. "You're going to kill them. They entered our territory armed with weapons, meant to harm my kind," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "What would your people do to wolves found skulking around your settlement, teeth bared?" He had a point, but I couldn't let it go. "Please," I urged, grabbing his arm, without thinking. "They're ignorant, not evil. Send them away," with a warning. Cole looked down at my hand, and I immediately let go, embarrassed by my boldness. "You defend those who would happily see you as wolf bait," he said coldly. "Your loyalty is misplaced." "It's not loyalty," I snapped. "It's basic humanity. Spill their blood, and you'll only confirm every fear, every suspicion my people have about your kind. There will be more hunters, more traps, more silver blades." A muscle in his jaw twitched as he considered my words. Finally, he turned to Kyle. "We'll drive them back. No bloodshed unless absolutely necessary." Relief washed over me. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Cole warned, his voice low. "Your future among us is still undecided." With that chilling statement, Cole and Kyle disappeared into the trees, leaving me alone with Sienna and Jace on the mountainside. I sank down onto a flat rock, the weight of my situation crashing down on me like a physical blow. I was miles from home, injured, at the mercy of creatures I had been raised to fear. Now hunters from my own settlement were potentially jeopardizing not only their lives, but any chance I had at resolving this peacefully. Jace approached, resting his small head against my knee with a soft whine. I absent-mindedly stroked his fur, noticing how much stronger he seemed now compared to the trembling pup I'd rescued the night before. "Your uncle is terrifying," I muttered softly, "but I suppose he has to be to keep all of you safe." Sienna watched us, her amber eyes thoughtful. After a beat, she moved closer, settling beside the rock where I sat. The gesture felt protective, though, whether it was for me or simply to keep an eye on me, I wasn't sure. Time dragged on. The sun arced across the sky, shadows growing longer. Afternoon slowly gave way to evening. My thoughts spiraled endlessly. Would Cole return? What would happen to the hunters? What fate awaited me at Silvercrest? The pendant around my neck remained warm, but gave no answers to my silent questions. Just as the light began to fade, I heard movement in the underbrush. Sienna immediately stood, positioning herself between me and the source of the noise. Jace pressed closer to my legs, a low growl building in his small chest. "It's me!" Cole's voice rang out just before he emerged from the trees alone. "Where's Cale?" I asked, scanning the forest's edge behind him, looking for any sign of the hunters making their way out of our territory. His expression was grim but relieved. "No blood was spilled," he said. "They were persuaded to retreat." Relief flooded me. "You kept your word." "I am many things." "Willa," he said, my name sounding strangely intimate in his deep voice, "but Oathbreaker is not one of them." There was something different about him now, a subtle softening in his eyes, a slight relaxation in his posture. Whatever had happened with the hunters had clearly shifted his perspective, though on what exactly I couldn't say. "We should move quickly," he said, glancing at the darkening sky. "Night falls fast in these mountains, and we still have a long way to go." He approached clearly, intending to carry me again, but I raised a hand to stop him. "I'd like to try walking if you don't mind. My ankle feels better after resting." It wasn't entirely true. The pain had dulled but hadn't gone away. But I needed some small measure of control, a way to hold on to my dignity in this strange new world. Cole studied me for a moment, then nodded. "As you wish. But tell me if the pain becomes unbearable. Pride makes poor company on a difficult journey." As I rose, carefully testing my weight on the injured ankle, I couldn't help but wonder what other difficult journeys Cole had endured. What wounds, visible and hidden, he carried beneath that hard exterior. With Jace bounding ahead and Sienna flanking us, we continued towards Silvercrest. The last traces of sunlight disappeared behind the western peaks. Whatever awaited me there, I would face it on my own 2 feet, no matter how unsteady they might be. When Silvercrest finally came into view, it wasn't the primitive camp I had imagined, but a hidden marvel nestled within the mountain's embrace. As we crested the final ridge, the dying light of dusk illuminated stone buildings, with timber accents arranged in concentric circles around a central structure that could only be described as a fortress. Smoke curled from chimneys and golden light spilled from windows, giving the settlement a warmth I hadn't expected from creatures so tied to the wilderness. "This is—" I trailed off at a loss for words. "Not what you expected," Cole supplied, a hint of pride in his voice. "We've dwelled here for 15 generations, long before your settlement claimed the valley below. People moved between the buildings, actual people, not wolves. Some glanced our way as we approached their activities, momentarily pausing before they resumed with deliberate casualness. News of my arrival had clearly reached them. "They're all like you?" I asked, my voice low. "Able to change forms most," Cole replied. "Some, like the very young or very old, maintain a single form by choice or necessity. Others came to us as humans and are still learning the way of the shift." My ankle throbbed with every step as we descended the sloping path into the heart of the settlement, but I refused to show any sign of weakness. Eyes followed us, some suspicious, others merely cautious or curious. Children peeked from behind doorways, only to be pulled back by anxious parents. I fought the urge to shrink under their collective gaze. Jace had shifted into human form somewhere along our journey, and I hadn't even noticed him leave. Now he approached, in his human shape, a boy of about 7 or 8, with the same silver-gray hair as Cole, and that distinct white streak between his storm-colored eyes. His clothes were simple, a mix of leather and wool, but his movements were fluid, a child well accustomed to 2 forms. "Uncle," he called, rushing to Cole's side. "Is she staying with us? Can I show her my collection of stones? I found a crystal yesterday that changes color in the moonlight." Cole placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, the action firm yet gentle, but his expression softened in a way I hadn't seen before. "Patience, Jace. Our guest needs rest and healing before anything else. Guest, not prisoner." The word hit me like a subtle reminder, not lost on me. "But she likes plants and growing things," Jace insisted, throwing a hopeful glance my way. I could show her the greenhouse, the hot springs. Cole's voice was firm, yet there was an unmistakable warmth there. "There will be time for that. Now, go to your mother. She's waiting at home." Jace hesitated for only a moment before darting forward, taking my hand briefly. "Thank you for saving me," he said, his face bright with sincerity. No one else would have stopped. Before I could respond, he disappeared into the dimming light, leaving behind the faint scent of pine and wild honey. "He's taken with you," Cole observed as we continued toward the central fortress, his tone unreadable. "That could prove complicated." A woman approached us then. tall and lithe, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back into a severe braid. Her eyes, unlike the gray or amber of the others, were a deep violet, the color of twilight, shadows over snow. "Brother," she greeted Cole, her eyes sweeping over me with sharp, unfiltered assessment. "This is the human who found Jace. This is Willa." Cole corrected. The emphasis on my name felt strangely intimate. "And this is my sister Ava. She serves as our healer and keeper of records." I inclined my head, unsure of the proper greeting. "It's an honor to meet you." Ava raised an eyebrow, her gaze piercing. "Polite, at least." She turned to Cole. "Her injury needs tending before the council gathers." It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, directed more at Cole than at me. "See to it," he agreed. "I'll join you after I've spoken with Kyle and the border guards," he said, striding away with the confidence of someone who never doubted his authority or the obedience of others. I watched him leave, feeling oddly vulnerable now that his imposing presence was gone. "Come," Ava said, her voice not unkind. "Your ankle worsens with every moment you stand on it." She led me away from the main fortress, guiding me to a smaller stone building, set apart from the others. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of dried herbs and wood smoke. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars, bundles of plants, and leather-bound books. A fire burned brightly in a central hearth, a copper pot hanging over it, steam rising and carrying the sharp, soothing scent of medicinal herbs. "Sit," Ava instructed, gesturing toward a cushioned bench. "Remove your boot." I complied, wincing as I eased my swollen foot free from the leather. Ava knelt gracefully, examining the injury with clinical precision. "A simple sprain," she stated after a few moments, her touch gentle but firm, though I bit my lip against the pain. "Though you didn't do it any favors by walking on it for miles." "I didn't have much choice," I muttered, trying to meet her gaze. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. "Few do when my brother makes decisions." She rose and moved toward one of the shelves, selecting various items with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "You used medicine on Jace," she noted, her voice steady. "My brother said the wound was healing remarkably fast when he found you." It wasn't quite a question, but expectation hung in the air between us. "A simple salve," I explained, my voice soft. "Yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for cell repair, pine resin to seal and protect." I trailed off. "And the pendant," Ava gestured to the crescent moon hanging around my neck, still visible at my throat. "What role did that play?" I touched it instinctively. "You believe it helped with the healing?" "I believe very little happens by coincidence," Ava replied, returning with a small clay bowl filled with a pungent paste, "especially when it involves the heir to our throne and a human with unusual knowledge of healing arts." As she applied the paste to my ankle, a cool sensation washed over the injury, bringing immediate relief. I considered her words carefully. "The pendant was my grandmother's," I said. Finally, my voice quieter than I intended. "She claimed it would protect me if I protected others first." Celine's hands paused her movements, freezing for just a moment. "Those exact words?" she asked, her tone curious. I nodded, confused by her reaction. "Interesting," she murmured, resuming her work. She carefully wrapped my ankle in soft bandages, her motions fluid and practiced. "Tell me about your grandmother." "She raised me after my parents died," I replied, unsure why she was asking. "She was a healer like me, though, much more skilled. People came from distant places to seek her remedies." "Did she ever speak of her own parents, her origins?" Celine's questions were starting to feel strange, but something about her intense gaze made me feel compelled to answer honestly. "Only that she came from the north originally. She never spoke of her family beyond my mother." Celine finished with my ankle and sat beside me on the bench, her violet eyes locked onto mine with unnerving focus. "The pendant you wear bears the mark of the Moon Shadow clan," she said softly, her voice steady. My heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Willa, that the blood running through your veins may be more complicated than you realize. She stood abruptly, crossing to the hearth to retrieve a steaming cup. Drink this, she instructed, handing it to me. It will help with the pain and inflammation. I accepted the cup, inhaling the familiar scent of willow bark and meadow sweet. My mind spun with the weight of what she had just said, too many questions rising that I wasn't ready to ask. Does Cole know? I asked after taking a cautious sip. He suspects something unusual about you, she answered, her tone thoughtful. Beyond your kindness to Jace. She gathered various herbs into a small pouch as she spoke. The elders will want answers I'm not sure you possess. Elders? I echoed, surprised. Our governing body, 7 representatives from the oldest families led by the Alpha. Her expression softened slightly when she noticed the uncertainty on my face. They won't harm you, Willa. Whatever else we are, we honor those who show kindness to our children. Before I could respond, the door burst open, and a young man rushed in, breathless and frantic. Lady Celine, you're needed at the north gate, he gasped. Hunters from the valley. They've returned with others. One of our scouts is injured, he added, voice tense. Silver blade to the shoulder. They're bringing him now. Celine's face hardened instantly. How badly? They're bringing him now, the young man repeated, urgency in his voice. Celine turned to me, a quick decision flashing across her face. Stay here. Rest. I'll return when I can. Before I could say a word, she was gone, sweeping out of the room, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts and the quiet crackle of the fire. I sat still for several minutes, the healer's tea cooling in my hands as I tried to process everything I'd just learned. My grandmother's pendant, the Moon Shadow clan, the possibilities about my own heritage. It was too much to comprehend all at once. Eventually, restlessness stirred in me, and I pushed myself to my feet. My ankle, carefully bandaged by Celine, only protested mildly as I moved around the room, running my fingers over shelves filled with remedies and ancient texts. Many of the herbs were familiar to me, though some preparations were unlike anything I had seen before. I recognized a tincture of moonflower, known for its potency in treating fevers. But here it was, combined with wolfsbane, a poison in human medicine, yet clearly used differently among the silver mains. A leather-bound book caught my eye, its spine marked with a silver crescent, the same symbol as my pendant. Hesitantly, I reached for it, some part of me, certain I was overstepping, yet unable to resist the pull of potential answers. The pages opened to reveal elegant script and detailed illustrations, plants, celestial charts, and anatomical drawings showing both human and wolf forms. Though I couldn't read the ancient language, the diagrams spoke volumes about the sophisticated understanding of healing possessed by these people. Just as I was lost in the pages, the door opened and I jumped, nearly dropping the book in my shock. It wasn't Celine who entered, but Cole. His face was thunderous, and his clothes were streaked with what could only be blood. He stopped short when he saw me standing, the book still in my hands. Curious, aren't you? He observed, his gaze flicking to the book I held, unreadable. I carefully returned the book to its shelf, my voice shaky. Your sister left to tend to an injured scout. I know, he said, his voice dark. He stepped deeper into the room, rolling his shoulder as if working out a kink. I've just come from there. The blood isn't mine, he said, finishing the thought. The scout will recover thanks to Sienna's skills. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked me over with an unreadable expression. Your people are persistent. They're not my people if they're attacking yours, I shot back firmly. Cole's expression shifted just the slightest, a softening around the eyes that was almost imperceptible. Gone before I could even fully register it. Indeed, he murmured. He stepped closer, halting just a few feet away from me. You should be resting your ankle, he suggested. I've rested enough, I replied, meeting his gaze head-on. What's happening with the hunters? Why have they returned? He studied me for a long, quiet moment before responding. They claim one of their own is missing. A young woman with light hair who ventured into the forest during yesterday's storm and never came back. My breath caught in my throat. They're looking for me. So it would seem, he said, his voice still and neutral. Their concern seems genuine, though their methods leave much to be desired. I need to let them know I'm safe, I insisted, before someone else gets hurt. And how would you explain your presence here? He asked, his voice still calm, but carrying an edge. Your apparent comfort among those they consider monsters? His words made me pause. How would I explain it? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know, I admitted. But I can't let them risk their lives on my account, regardless of what I think of their tactics. Cole's eyes locked onto mine, searching as though trying to understand something deeper. Your loyalty to those who would harm us is perplexing. It's not loyalty, I corrected. It's responsibility. They're only here because of me. He considered that for a moment before nodding once. Decision made. Very well. You will speak with them from a distance with guards present. You will tell them you're here willingly receiving treatment for your injury and that you'll return when you're healed. Relief washed over me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he warned, his voice low. The elders still need to speak with you, and they're far less inclined toward mercy than I am. The irony of him, the Alpha King, claiming to be merciful, could have amused me in another situation, but now it only underscored the fragile nature of my position. When I asked simply, tomorrow, after you've rested and spoken to the hunters. He gestured toward a small alcove I hadn't noticed before, where a narrow bed waited. You'll stay here tonight, under Sienna's watch. I nodded, suddenly acutely aware of the bone-deep exhaustion that had been building since our journey began. And what should I expect from this council? I asked, my voice low. Cole was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Questions. Many questions. Answer truthfully. They will know if you lie. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the latch. Your pendant, he said, turning back to me. Keep it visible. It may offer more protection than you realize. With that cryptic piece of advice, he left the door, closing softly behind him. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind racing, despite my body's desperate plea for rest. Outside, the first howls of the night rose toward the sky, a haunting, beautiful sound that spoke of kinship and belonging in ways human voices never could. I touched my grandmother's pendant, wondering what secrets it held, what blood truly ran in my veins. Tomorrow would bring confrontation and revelations I could scarcely imagine. But tonight, cradled in the heart of a world I'd been taught to fear, I felt strangely at peace. Dawn came as a soft whisper of light through the small window of Sienna's healing house. I woke disoriented, the memories of the previous day rushing back as my eyes adjusted to the unfamiliar surroundings. My ankle felt remarkably better, the swelling almost gone. Whatever had been in Sienna's paste, it had worked far better than any remedy I had ever created. Sienna was already awake, moving quietly around the room as she prepared various concoctions. She glanced my way when she saw me stir and nodded in acknowledgement. You slept deeply, she observed. Good. Healing requires rest. I sat up carefully, testing my ankle. It barely hurts, I said, surprised at how much better it felt. Your medicine is remarkable. A hint of pride touched her features. The knowledge of generations, Cole said, his voice thoughtful. Though I suspect you carry some of that knowledge in your own blood. Before I could respond to this continuing suggestion of my connection to the Silvermanes, the door opened, and a young woman entered with a tray full of food. She placed it down carefully, keeping her gaze lowered, and left without a word. You make them nervous, Ava explained, gesturing for me to eat. Few humans have entered Silvercrest willingly in living memory. The meal was simple but plentiful: fresh bread, honeyberries, and what appeared to be venison cooked rare. My stomach growled at the sight, reminding me of how little I had eaten since leaving my settlement. Cole said I could speak with the hunters today, I said, between bites. To let them know you're safe, Ava nodded. After the morning meal, he's arranged a meeting at the ridge overlook, far enough from our borders to protect our people, but close enough for voices to carry. I finished the meal quickly, eager to resolve at least one aspect of my complicated situation. Ava provided me with clean clothing, soft leggings, and a tunic of muted green, similar to what I had seen other women in the settlement wearing. The fabric was finer than anything I had owned, with delicate embroidery at the hem and sleeves. "These are beautiful," I said, running my fingers over the intricate stitches. "They belong to my mother." Ava replied, her expression momentarily unreadable. "They should fit you well enough." The gesture felt significant, though I wasn't entirely sure why. I changed quickly, relieved to be out of my mud-streaked traveling clothes. When I emerged from the alcove, Ava was waiting with a small cup of liquid. "For continued healing," she explained, "and strength. The day ahead will demand both." I drank without hesitation, surprised by how much I trusted her despite our brief acquaintance. The mixture tasted of mint and something sweeter, leaving a pleasant warmth spreading through me. We stepped outside together into the crisp morning air of Silver Crest. The settlement was fully awake now, revealing details I hadn't noticed in the fading light of the previous evening. Gardens bloomed between the buildings. Children played under watchful eyes, and artisans worked at open-air stations. It might have been any human village but for the occasional glimpse of someone's shifting forms or the grace with which the inhabitants moved. Cole waited for us at the settlement's edge, accompanied by Kael and two other guards I didn't recognize. His expression was as unreadable as ever, but I could see the tension in his shoulders and the alertness in his posture. This meeting mattered more to him than he was letting on. "You look better," he said, his eyes briefly taking in the clothing Ava had provided. Something passed between the siblings, an unspoken exchange that I couldn't interpret. "I feel better," I confirmed. "Thank you for arranging this meeting." He nodded and turned to lead the way up a narrow path that wound away from the settlement. I followed, keenly aware of Kael's watchful gaze as he trailed behind us. The ridge over Luch provided a stunning view of the valley below and the forest that separated Silvercrest from my settlement. In the distance, I could make out a small group of figures. 5 men, armed but keeping their distance from the boundary markers that clearly marked the edge of Silvermane territory. I recognized Wade, our settlement's headhunter, and to my surprise I saw Eli, the herbalist, who had often asked for my assistance with particularly difficult remedies. The others were familiar faces from hunting parties I'd seen leave over the years. "Can they see us?" I asked, noticing how Cole positioned himself slightly behind me, visible but not threatening. "Yes," he confirmed. "Speak clearly, and they'll hear you." Taking a deep breath, I called out, "Wade, Eli. I'm here and I'm unharmed." The figures below stirred, conferring briefly before Wade's voice reached us. "Willa, are you being held against your will? Blink twice if you cannot speak freely." Despite the gravity of the situation, I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "I'm here of my own accord." I paused briefly. "I found an injured wolf pup during the storm and helped it. Its family found us and brought me to their healer for my sprained ankle." It was a simplified version of the truth, but I hoped it would suffice. Eli stepped forward, cupping his hands around his mouth to project his voice. "When will you return?" he called. "The settlement needs your skills." The question caught me off guard. In the chaos of the last few days, I hadn't considered how long I might stay in Silvercrest. I glanced at Cole, who gave me a barely perceptible nod. "A few more days," I answered, though I wasn't sure if that was accurate. "My ankle needs time to heal completely. Please tell everyone I'm safe and will return soon." Wade seemed unconvinced, his posture stiff with suspicion. "These creatures are dangerous, Willa. Whatever they've told you, they've shown me nothing but care." I interrupted, my voice stronger than I intended. "The violence came from our side, Thomas. A silver blade in the side of a wolf pup hunters, trespassing with weapons drawn. Who are the dangerous ones?" Silence followed my outburst. I could feel Cole shift behind me, stepping a little closer. "You speak as one of them. Now Thomas finally called, his tone full of accusation. I speak as someone who's seen both sides, I shot back. Go home, Thomas. Tell the others to stay away from these borders. No one needs to be hurt over a misunderstanding. For a tense moment I thought he might refuse. Then Eli placed a hand on his shoulder, muttering something too low for me to hear. Finally Thomas nodded stiffly. 3 days, he called. If you haven't returned in 3 days, we'll consider you lost to us. The unspoken threat hung in the air between us. I nodded, acknowledging his terms without agreeing to them. With obvious reluctance, the hunting party turned and began their journey back toward the settlement. That went better than expected, Ava murmured beside me. Did it? I wasn't so sure. Thomas's parting words felt more like a deadline than a concession. Cole's hand briefly touched my shoulder, a rare gesture that wasn't strictly necessary. You did well, he said, his voice low, though I doubt they're fully convinced. Eli will help, I replied. He's more reasonable than Thomas. The older one, Cole asked. He smells of herbs and concern. Is he your mate? The question took me by surprise. No, he's a colleague, nothing more. I have no mate. Something flickered in Cole's eyes there and gone too quickly for me to identify. The elders await, he said, changing the subject abruptly. Are you prepared? My heart quickened at the reminder. As much as I can be without knowing what they want from me. Answers, Ava supplied, falling into step beside us as we descended back toward Silvercrest. About the pendant, your lineage and Jace's healing. They won't harm you, but their questions will be direct. The central fortress loomed ahead, its stone walls gleaming in the morning light. I squared my shoulders, reaching up to touch my grandmother's pendant for reassurance. Inside the fortress revealed itself as a blend of practical function and unexpected beauty. High windows let natural light flood the polished wooden floors, and tapestries depicting forests, wolves, and celestial bodies adorned the walls. In between were weapons, showing that these people were ready to defend their own. Cole led us to a circular chamber at the heart of the structure. 7 carved chairs sat in a semicircle around a central stone dais. 5 of the chairs were already occupied by silver manes of varying ages, each watching my entrance with intense curiosity. The Council of 7, Cole explained quietly. Representatives of our oldest families, chosen for wisdom, not strength alone. Ava took her place in one of the empty chairs, leaving only Cole's seat vacant. He guided me to the dais before claiming his own position at the center of the semicircle. Willa of the Valley settlement, he began, informally, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. You stand before the council to answer questions about your encounter with the heir to our throne, your unusual healing abilities, and the pendant you wear. Will you speak truth to this gathering? You will. I promised, struggling to keep my voice steady under the collective weight of their gaze. An elderly woman with silver hair and remarkably clear amber eyes leaned forward in her chair. Show us the pendant, child. I lifted the crescent moon from where it rested against my skin. A murmur passed through the council as the blue stone caught the light. The moon shadow seal, the woman, confirmed her gaze, shifting to Cole. There can be no doubt. That proves nothing, countered a middle-aged man with a jagged scar across his temple. The pendant could have been stolen, passed through many hands before reaching hers. My grandmother gave it to me before she died, I interjected. She said it would protect me if I protected others first. Ava nodded, her eyes softening slightly. The exact words of the moon shadow oath. What was your grandmother's name? Asked a younger council member, her expression less severe than the others. Eliana, I replied. She came to our settlement before I was born, married a local hunter, and had my mother. After my parents died, she raised me alone until her passing 10 years ago. Recognition flashed across several faces, and Cole and Sienna exchanged a meaningful glance. Eliana Moonshadow disappeared. During the Great Divide, the elderly woman explained, her voice gentle. She was believed killed along with most of her family. A rare few escaped the slaughter. My knees weakened. Slaughter. I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. A dark chapter in our history, Cole said grimly. 30 years ago, a faction of humans discovered one of our outposts. Entire families were lost, including the Moon Shadows. They were known for their healing gifts and their ability to bridge the gap between human and wolf. I murmured, the fragmented memories of my grandmother's past flooding back. Her reluctance to speak of it, her nightmares, the way she flinched at sudden sounds. She protected you by keeping silent, Sienna observed, but she ensured you carried both her knowledge and her legacy. She gestured toward the pendant. That stone is azurite. It strengthens healing abilities. And in the hands of a Moonshadow descendant, it amplifies natural gifts. The scarred council member leaned forward. If what you suggest is true, then this human is one of us, the elderly woman finished firmly. By blood, if not by knowledge. I struggled to process their words, to reconcile this revelation with everything I had believed about myself. I can't change forms, I pointed out, grasping at the most obvious difference. The gift manifests differently across bloodlines, Cole explained. Some moon shadows never shifted. Instead, they channeled their nature into healing and connection with the natural world. The pieces of my life, the affinity for herbs, my grandmother's secretive past. My sense of never quite fitting in with my settlement were rearranging themselves into a picture I barely recognized. Jace's wound, I said slowly. It healed faster than it should have. Because you carry Moonshadow blood, confirmed Ava. Your touch, your intent, your connection to the pendant, they combined to accelerate his natural healing. The council watched me closely, gauging my reaction to these revelations. I felt lightheaded, as if the ground had shifted beneath me. What does this mean? I asked, finally looking directly at Cole. For me, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. It means you have choices, Willa. You can return to your settlement as promised, carrying this knowledge, but continuing your life as before. Or, he paused as if weighing his words, or you can stay. The possibility of staying, of learning about this heritage I never knew I had, was simultaneously terrifying and strangely appealing. The elderly woman nodded approvingly. The Moonshadow gifts have been absent from our people for too long. Your return, even as a quarter-blood, would be celebrated. Quarter-blood, I echoed, still reeling from the shock. Your grandmother was full. Silvermane, Ava explained. Your mother was half making you a quarter-blood, enough to carry significant gifts, as we've seen with Jace's healing. I closed my eyes briefly, overwhelmed. When I opened them, Cole was watching me with an intensity that made my heart skip a beat. You don't need to decide immediately, he said softly, his voice gentler than I'd heard before. The council grants you sanctuary until your ankle is fully healed at minimum. And my promise to return to the settlement, I asked, uncertainty creeping into my voice. It can be honored with a visit rather than permanent relocation, suggested Ava. If that's what you choose, the council members exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. Cole stood, signaling the end of the gathering. Willa will remain under my protection while she considers her path. He announced, his tone brooking no argument. She is free to explore Silvercrest, to learn our ways, to ask her questions. As the council dispersed, I remained on the dais, my thoughts swirling like autumn leaves caught in a storm. Cole approached, standing a little too close, his presence almost overwhelming. Are you well? He asked quietly, genuine concern in his voice. I don't know. I admitted, feeling a weight on my chest. Everything I believed about myself, about my family, it's all changing so quickly. Something like understanding crossed his features. Identity is not a fixed point, Willa, but a journey. You haven't lost yourself. You've merely discovered new pathways. The wisdom in his words surprised me, revealing a depth beneath his stoic exterior. Before I could respond, Jace burst into the chamber, his eyes bright with excitement. Is it true? He demanded, skidding to a stop before us. Are you staying? Can I show you the greenhouse now? Jace asked, his enthusiasm shining through despite the tension. Despite the whirlwind of thoughts in my head, I couldn't help but smile at his excitement. "I'm staying for now," I confirmed, my voice steady. "And yes, I'd love to see your greenhouse." Jace whooped with delight, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward the door. I glanced back at Cole, meeting his gaze for a moment. Unexpectedly, I saw a warmth there, something soft and reassuring in his eyes. A warmth that ignited something equally unexpected in my chest. Whatever path lay ahead, I was no longer walking it alone. 3 days passed like a dream, vivid, transformative, and filled with revelations that reshaped how I viewed myself and the world around me. Jace was an enthusiastic guide, showing me every corner of Silvercrest he was allowed to. The greenhouse was a marvel, a beautiful blend of glass and timber built over natural hot springs that created a constant warm mist, perfect for growing rare medicinal plants. I recognized many of them from my grandmother's teachings, though some were entirely new to me. "This one's for wounds that won't heal," Jace said, pointing to a delicate purple flower. "And this one helps with the pain of shifting when you're first learning," he added proudly. "You're very knowledgeable," I observed, impressed by his confidence. He puffed up with pride. "Aunt Ava says I have healer's hands. I'm going to learn both fighting and healing, so I can protect my people. And care for them, too." His casual mention of his future duties reminded me of who he was, heir to the Silvermane leadership, nephew to Cole. Over the past few days, I had barely seen Cole, catching only glimpses of him overseeing training sessions or deep in conversation with council members. Though he'd promised me protection, he seemed to maintain a deliberate distance. Ava, by contrast, had taken me under her wing, teaching me Silvermane medicine and sharing stories of the Moonshadow clan, my clan if the council's claims were to be believed. We spent afternoons in her healing house, preparing remedies and discussing the properties of various plants. With each passing hour, the strangeness of my situation faded, replaced by a growing sense of belonging I had never felt in my settlement below. "Your hands work with intuitive knowledge," I observed, as I carefully added precise amounts of herbs to a tincture, measuring only by instinct. "The blood remembers what the mind has never been taught," she added. By the 3rd day, my ankle had healed completely, far faster than a normal sprain should have. Ava attributed it to both her medicines and my own heritage, suggesting my body responded differently to treatments because of my Silvermane blood. "However diluted it remains part of you," she explained. "It's why you've always healed quickly, why plants respond to your touch, why animals trust you when they should flee." That evening, I stood at the edge of Silvercrest, gazing at the sunset painting the valley in golden light. The deadline set by Wade loomed over me like a dark cloud: return tomorrow, or be considered lost to the settlement. The choice should have torn me apart, but I found myself strangely calm, as though the decision had already been made deep within my heart. "Your thoughts are far away." Cole's voice startled me, and I turned to find him standing a few paces behind me. His expression was softer than I was used to seeing. "Not so far," I replied, my eyes drifting back to the valley below. "Just down there in the settlement." He continued, moving to stand beside me. His shoulder nearly brushed mine as we both gazed at the settlement in the distance. "You're considering your promise to return," he said. "They expect me tomorrow. And what do you expect of yourself?" His question was gentle but probing, pushing me to articulate feelings I'd been avoiding. "I need to return," I said slowly. "To explain, to gather my things, to say proper goodbyes. But I don't think I belong there anymore." I hesitated, my voice barely above a whisper. "If I ever did." Cole nodded, as if my answer confirmed something he'd already suspected. "I'll arrange an escort to accompany you. You don't trust me to return?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. His eyes met mine, startlingly intense in the dimming light. "I don't trust them to let you go a second time. Not after you've spent days among dangerous creatures." "Oh," I said, the unexpected concern in his voice warming something inside me. "Thank you." We stood in companionable silence as the last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon stars, emerging in the darkening sky. When Cole spoke again, his voice had taken on a new tone, gentler, almost vulnerable. "When I found you with Jace in that cabin," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I saw only a human with my heir." "I was unkind," I countered. "You were protecting your family. I understand that better now, even so." His hand moved to cover mine where it rested on a nearby stone, the contact sending an unexpected current through my body. "I've watched you these past days," he continued, his voice low but steady. "Your gentleness with Jace, your willingness to learn the ease with which you've adapted to a world that must seem strange to you. I was wrong in my judgment." The admission seemed to cost him something, and it struck me in a way I hadn't expected. The powerful Alpha was unused to acknowledging mistakes. But there it was. I turned my hand beneath his, our palms meeting in a touch that felt heavier than words could express. "We were all wrong," I said softly. "My people about yours, yours about mine." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. Maybe that's why the moon shadows were so important. They stood between worlds, building bridges instead of walls. Something flickered in Cole's eyes at that, an understanding, a decision made. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice steady, "after you've settled matters in your settlement, there will be a gathering. The full moon rises and we celebrate together, remembering those we've lost and honoring those we've found." His fingers tightened around mine. "I would have you there, Willa Moonshadow, if you choose to return to us." The use of that surname, a heritage I was only beginning to understand, sent a shiver through me. "I'll return," I promised, the certainty in my voice surprising even me. Morning arrived clear and crisp, the forest between Silvercrest and the valley settlement glowing in autumn's colors. Cole led my escort with Kyle and 2 other guards, Thorn and Kira, at his side. We traveled in human form, but I knew the others could shift in an instant if danger approached. As we neared the edge of the settlement, Cole turned to me. "We'll remain just within the tree line," he said. "If you're not back by midday, we'll come for you." The protective words warmed me, though I tried not to show it. "I won't be long. There's little I need to bring back," I said. "Be careful," he added, his voice softening. "Trust your instincts." "They're stronger than you realize," he said with a meaningful glance. With a nod, I left the safety of their company and stepped onto the familiar path into the settlement. It felt strange to return to a place that had been my home for 22 years, yet now seemed foreign, even suffocating. People paused in their morning routines to stare as I passed, whispers trailing in my wake. Eli was the first to approach, relief etched on his weathered face. "Cole, we weren't sure you'd return," he said, studying me with a curiosity I hadn't expected. "You look different." I smiled, knowing he was right. 3 days among the Silvermanes had changed me in ways that went far beyond the physical. My posture was straighter, my steps more confident, and my eyes, no longer avoiding the gaze of others, met them directly. Even my connection to my grandmother's pendant felt stronger, the blue stone pulsing with energy against my skin. "I am different," I admitted, "but still myself." Thomas appeared from the meeting hall, his expression hardening when he saw me. "So the creatures let you go after all," he said coldly. "Or did they send you back with a purpose?" A small crowd of villagers had gathered, forming a loose circle around us. I could feel their weariness, their suspicion in a way I never would have noticed before my time in Silvercrest. "They're not creatures," Thomas, I replied calmly. "They're people with a different way of living, a different connection to the world around them." "And they didn't let me go." I met his gaze. "I was free to leave whenever I chose." "Free," he scoffed. "After they took you against your will." "They took me to their healer for my injured ankle," I corrected. "And in doing so, they helped me discover truths about myself that I never knew." My hand instinctively touched my pendant, and several people in the crowd gasped, recognizing its significance from my grandmother's time among them. "Eliana's pendant," murmured an elderly woman. "She said it came from her northern kin," I confirmed, watching. Understanding bloom on some faces, confusion on others. Eli stepped forward, his voice lowered. You're saying you're one of them, a shapeshifter? I shook my head. The blood is diluted in me. I can't shift forms, but I carry other gifts. Healing connection to plants and animals. I met his gaze steadily. It explains much about my life here, doesn't it? Why I've always felt apart. Thomas's expression darkened further. So you've come to say you're joining them, betraying your own kind for wolves. I've come to gather my belongings and say proper goodbyes, I replied, refusing to be baited by his hostility. The silver manes are as much my kind as the people here, more so in some ways. My grandmother fled here after her family was slaughtered, hiding her true nature to survive. Murmurs spread through the growing crowd. I realized with sudden clarity that I stood at a crossroads not just for myself, but for both communities. The violence between our people serves no one. I continued raising my voice to address the crowd. I'm here because we need to find a way to bridge the gap before it's too late. The silver manes wish for peace and respect of boundaries. The attacks, the traps, the silver weapons, they only perpetuate fears on both sides. Wade challenged. I speak as someone who stood in both worlds, I countered. Something few have done in generations. My grandmother's family, the Moon Shadows, once served as mediators between humans and Silvermanes. Perhaps that tradition doesn't have to die with her, Eli said thoughtfully. Eliana always advocated against the hunting of wolves, he added quietly. Now we understand why. I moved toward my small dwelling at the settlement's edge. The crowd parted reluctantly to let me pass. Inside I gathered the few belongings that held meaning. My grandmother's journal, a collection of dried herbs, a carved wooden box containing personal mementos. Everything else could stay perhaps useful to whoever next needed the space. As I worked, Eli appeared in the doorway. You're really leaving us? He asked, his tone neutral, but sad. I've found where I belong, I said simply. But I don't consider it a severing of ties. I'll still create remedies, still help when sickness comes. The distance between our settlements isn't so great, he said, offering a sad smile. Physical distance, perhaps not. But other distances. He added, his hand gesturing vaguely. Wade and his supporters won't easily accept this new arrangement. They don't have to accept it, merely tolerate it, I said, securing my bundle of belongings. Change comes slowly, but it comes. Be careful, Willa, Eli warned as I prepared to leave. You walk between worlds now. Both will demand pieces of you. I embraced him briefly, recognizing the wisdom in his concern. Thank you for your kindness over the years. You are one of the few who saw me as I am. Outside, the crowd had thinned somewhat, though Wade and a small group of hunters remained watching me with open suspicion. I squared my shoulders and walked directly toward them, refusing to slink away like a thief in the night. This isn't finished, Wade said as I approached, his voice cold. Those creatures have bewitched you somehow. The only magic at work is truth. Wade, I replied wearily. I've discovered where I come from, who my people are. Wouldn't you do the same in my position? Before he could answer, movement at the settlement's edge caught my attention. Cole stood just within view, his tall figure unmistakable even at a distance. He'd grown concerned at my extended absence, unwilling to remain hidden while I faced potential hostility alone. The sight of him, proud and protective, yet restrained enough to respect my handling of the situation, filled me with warmth that had nothing to do with the morning sun. Wade followed my gaze, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt when he spotted the Silvermane Alpha. Don't, I warned sharply. He means no harm, but he will defend what's his. Wade's eyes narrowed at my choice of words. And you belong to him now. Is that it? I belong to myself, I corrected firmly. But I've chosen my path, and it leads back to Silvercrest. I softened my tone, offering an olive branch. This doesn't have to be an ending, Wade. It could be a beginning, a chance for understanding between our peoples. after generations of fear. Something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in a lifetime of prejudice. He stepped aside, allowing me clear passage. "Go then," he said gruffly, "but know that my duty is to protect this settlement, whatever you may have become." I know I acknowledged and I respect that duty even as I follow my own. With that, I walked away from the only home I'd known, toward the man waiting at the forest's edge, the man who had started as my captor, and somehow in the space of 3 tumultuous days transformed into something else entirely. What that something was, I wasn't yet certain, but I felt its power drawing me forward like the moon pulling the tide. Cole's expression remained neutral as I approached, though I could sense the relief in the slight easing of his shoulders. "You're unharmed," he observed quietly. "They're confused, not violent," I replied, falling into step beside him as we retreated into the forest where Kael and the others waited. At least most of them. His hand brushed mine briefly, a subtle touch of reassurance. "You handled them well with dignity." Coming from him, the praise meant more than it should have. We walked in companionable silence until the settlement was well behind us, the forest embracing us in its shifting patterns of light and shadow. "What happens now?" I asked eventually. As Silvercrest's stone buildings appeared in the distance, Cole's gaze met mine, something warm and unguarded in his expression. "Now you take your place among us, if that's what you truly want." "It is," I confirmed, the certainty in my voice surprising even me. Then tonight, beneath the full moon, we welcome Willa Moonshadow home. As we crossed the threshold into Silvercrest, together, Jace raced to meet us, his young face alight with joy at my return. Behind him, Ruth watched with knowing eyes, a subtle smile playing at her lips. Around us, the Silvermanes paused in their daily activities to observe my homecoming. Their initial wariness softened into cautious acceptance. I had journeyed far beyond the simple act of saving a wolf pup in a storm. I had found my heritage, my history, my home. And perhaps in the stern yet increasingly gentle Alpha walking beside me, I had found something else as well. Something that, like the waxing moon soon to rise over our celebration, was growing fuller and brighter with each passing day.